Hi there, and welcome on the journey to transform culture. I'm Steve, and I'll be your guide. Well, folks, I hope you're having a fantastic day and an even better week. Today, folks, we want to jump into a topic of sacrifice. I know, right? Sacrifice is no little thing. Through the ages, many have sacrificed, right? Not only for freedoms, for sovereignty, for the right to exist, all kinds of um, sacrifices have been made in time and treasure, right? But in our modern world of organizations and business and that sort of thing, and not just business, but any organization really, what seems to be left kind of off to the side is this notion of sacrifice. We tend to see an inflation of a perpetuation of selling culture on sacrifices being made, and while at the same time demanding more sacrifice from others. So that people in the middle, whether they be organizations or people, it's the passing the buck, right? I'm sacrificing, but I'm not really sacrificing because the customer is paying 25, 30, 40, 50% more, right? But yet, and I'm starting out with ownership and leadership, but I'll get to the broader team in a second. But you can see where the nefarious, essentially using layoffs and all the gimmickry, right? Use all the gimmickry to show that they're very efficient and effective, and then try to convince customers that, well, prices have gone up because of these things. Now, oftentimes there is truth in that. The problem is that as you go down the line through different organizations, supply chain and so forth, you see that everybody's just throwing layers and layers onto, gouging the customer at the next level in that supply chain, right? And so that ultimately the end producer of, say, a product or service now has to present the customer with this big bill, right? So sometimes that exists in reality where inflation is a one-to-one from the organization out if their supply chain isn't that deep or if they got a pretty good handle on it. When it isn't, then you can see where the system essentially is feeding false narratives through the supply chain. Everybody's basically, let's just cut to the chase. They're padding their pockets, right? And you can see that after the COVID time frame, initial time frame of COVID, that after that, the backlash from that has been this perception that, well, we need to do this because of all the XYZ 1, 2, 3. Well, okay, you sacrificed maybe 6 months of profit, but then you got 3 or 4 years of gouging customers, right? To then not only make up for the lost half to a full year, but then again to build upon that for another 3 years and inflate your profits, right? We call that profiteering. So back in the day, World War One, we saw where war profiteering was made illegal because contractors across the board were highly inflating prices. Now you take that mode, and these days we don't think much about that. But when you look at how the COVID and other things occur, how it becomes the reason, right? Now we blame the supply chain with a foggy, source of the problem, a source that we can never really improve because it's out of my hands, right? There's no difference than when we get to the broader team within a smaller, whether it be a small or large organization, but within an organization where somebody who's part of the workforce says, well, I can't fix it because it's 3 steps down in the process or it's management. But as long as nobody ever does anything about it or owns it, it never gets fixed. So therefore, your inefficiencies are embedded in the process itself, right? So inefficiency and the lack of really caring for your customers has equated to an entire economy and more, not just the United States, but throughout the world, economies suffering at the hand of those not pursuing improving how they do business. And anyway, so there's that. Inefficiency. So we can't sell sacrifice. Oh, well, we're sacrificing because of our supply chain. That's an excuse. It's laziness. Let's just call it what it is. It's not sacrifice for you to blame supply chain. It's not sacrifice for you to blame employees for quality if you're not investing in employee development and programs to make sure that your systems and your products are produced with high quality. Bottom line, if you're not owning it and you're in a blame game, you're not making a sacrifice. You're just blaming other people. That's called obfuscation of responsibility. And it's a codependence, right? Because you're codependent on the notion, on the idea that the customer will feel bad for you instead of saying, well, pursue solving that problem. You're trying to garner sympathy while at the same time benefiting, and then turning around and telling employees that, impressing upon them all the sacrifices that you're making, right? You're not. You're just passing the buck. You're passing it on to customers. Okay, so there's an ownership leadership side of the house. Now, within the broader teams, within organizations, there are those that were like, well, I've been sacrificing and I sacrificed this and I sacrificed that. And same thing, as I just mentioned, if you're not solving the problem, or, well, it's not my job to solve that problem. Well, are you not an advocate for the customer in every single thing you do while you're there, every minute of the day that you're working in your organization? Yes, you are. You're an advocate for the customer. If something is wrong, then you need to bring it to somebody's attention so that the group can then solve the problem, right? It may not be your sole responsibility to solve the problem, but it definitely is a responsibility to instead of walking around, stepping over, it's kind of like the teenager who fails to clean their room, right? And so they end up having stuff scattered hither and yon, and they're stepping over, walking around the problem, that sort of thing. They become so used to the problem existing that they don't realize or even care, because you know what? It's not my problem, right? Of course, that's, you might expect that initially from a teenager until you say, hey, look, you're not getting an allowance if you don't clean your room. But to take ownership goes above and beyond just a paycheck. Now, I'm not saying that's part of the equation because, as I just mentioned, ownership also has to make sure that they're doing what they need to create a fairness and an equitability within the organization, right? So there needs to be a fairness there, and that extrapolates out to the economy as well. Because if your inefficiency in your organization is literally affecting culture and the economy at large, that means also that the people who are working in your organization are affected by your inefficiency too. They're also a one-to-one, even if they don't directly purchase your product, somebody in their family probably does, or somebody that they know, or see what I'm saying? There's very rarely are you more than once or twice removed from a product or service that is influencing your local economy and so forth. So, but as team members, we can't obfuscate responsibility either. There has to be a sacrifice, and we all, at all levels, from the newest employee, the newest person to enter the workforce, all the way up to CEOs and leaders in our country and in our businesses, in our local communities, and all of that. Everyone, if you're going to make a sacrifice, that is what creates a reciprocal balance, right? The balance is that I make a sacrifice, I might receive payment, and so forth, right? So, but if you're not getting paid fairly, you probably wouldn't run that business. Why is it any different for your employees? And employees, why would you give half effort or even 2/3 or 3/4 effort and expect that you're going to improve how the business does? You have to give 100%. If you're giving 100%, great. If you're giving 100%, but then you're just hands off with participating and improving for your customers, because that also moves that needle, right? Moves that needle upward, right? And So that's also going to improve your organization to be able to grow, expand, hire more people, pay people better, and so on and so forth. It doesn't come out of thin air. It comes as a result of. Now, that being said, do you see where if ownership is pulling an unfair portion, right? And they're free to do that, by the way. But they're not sacrificing, right? There is no sacrifice. There is no reciprocal relationship going on here between them and their customers. Because while you might think it's between them and the employees, no, it's between them and their customers. Because if you are paying your employees fairly, right? I'm not saying all employees aren't paid fairly, but if you're paying them fairly, right, then you're going to make sure that for that fair pay, that those programs and those processes and procedures are followed the way they're supposed to be, so that the product and service exceeds what may have been your norm for quality and service in the past, right? So if you've been pulling 80 to 85% on time delivery, and your scrap rate is 12%, and see where I'm going with this? On your surge forward to get into best in class, you don't get to best in class if your employees are not also performing at best in class in best in class ways, right? So engagement. So this communication, right? Part of the sacrifice is your time and energy. It isn't just showing up and punching a clock, even if you're a salary employee. It isn't just putting your tail in the seat. It's being there to lead, engage, overcome issues that come up, free up constraints so that things can move swiftly for the customers to be served well. And of course, you have to find other customers and grow your business, right? Those are all important things you have to do. But those don't just happen because you showed up and opened the door. They just don't. You know this. But at the heart of it, what often gets lost is that, well, we just get in this linear path and we think that's sacrifice. That isn't sacrifice. Sacrifice is you're uncomfortable to talk to your employees, to hear what they might have for feedback. Your sacrifice is to take yourself out of your comfort zone, get out of your chair, make yourself accessible and available so that you can listen and hear and pick up on what's going on so that you can improve your organization, right? And by doing so, with that motif, with that in the back of your mind as you go, you're also improving how the work flows for your employees. You improve how that workflow goes. You might think, well, if I make their job, it's not my job to make their job easier. It's work for a reason. Yes. But if you improve how the work gets done, then guess what? Then you're going to see your 10%. You're going to 8, 10, 12. And if you're really good at this, you might even hit 15 to 20. If you can't get to 15 or 20, give me a call. I can help you out. But you see, you have to engage. You have to sacrifice. It goes above and beyond paycheck. It has to be in the volition, whether you're the owner, the leader of the organization, on site or regionally or whatever, however you're set up divisionally, or you're a member of the broader team. You have to own it. You have to make the sacrifice. You have to step out of your comfort zone to do what's right. And always remember this. You're not doing this for the owners if you're the broader team. If you're the owner, you're not doing it just for the employees. Remember, it's customer first, then the broader team, and then by default, ownership and leadership will be taken care of. If you follow that methodology, 1, 2, 3, customers, team, then by default, the leadership and ownership will be taken care of. And you won't even have to worry about it. But if you put any other sequence to that, you're struggling. And you might be struggling now because of it, because you're saying customer, ownership, employees. No. Or you're going ownership, customer, employee, or ownership, employee. See what I'm saying? No, it never works. It has to be, absolutely has to be. If you are to be a successful organization, right? To sacrifice properly. Sometimes to sacrifice is to improve your intellect and improve in your wisdom, right? So put your customer first, take care of your team, and then take care of you, right? It's a simple formula, folks. This is not rocket science. Sacrifice. Don't feign sacrifice. Real sacrifice means going above and beyond. You're not sacrificed just to show up and get a paycheck if you're in the broader team or part of the ownership leadership. If you're just showing up, going through, a rote kind of a routine, if you're in a routine way of handling things, it's fine to have a certain routine. I'm not, demonizing routine. What I am saying is don't get stuck in a rut, right? If you get stuck in a rut of routine and you can't break out of it, you should challenge yourself every day. What's something that I can do differently today to check into a thing or this? Maybe it's maintenance here, facility there, production here, quality there. Make your rounds. Do your Gemba, your management walks, right? Do your management walks. Do all the things. And make sure that your support staff is also just as invested as the site leaders and so forth. They can't be in cruise mode. They need to be in owning the whole notion of sacrifice to go above and beyond. Because remember, we're doing it for the customer. All right, folks, just wanted to touch base on sacrifice. Don't feign sacrifice. Don't blame or try to obfuscate I'm sacrificing because of a supply chain issue and all these faux and fake things that are going on. We know that there are those who are scooping off big time profit and kind of leaving the industries to struggle along. But we don't get there, we don't improve upon this unless we improve upon what we're doing, what we can control. And what we can control in organizations are ownership, leadership, and the broader team. And we do that for the customer. All right, folks, hit that good domino 3 to 5 times a day to uplift, motivate, inspire, and just encourage folks. And when you do that, not only are you helping to transform their lives, which ends up being culture and organizations to include, are included in that, but we're also improving our own lives, and that's very important. All right, folks, hit like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, we'll talk to you later.